We are in pre-calculus doing some Algebra 2 review. We are on Algebra 2 lesson 9-8, graphing sinusoidal functions. So it all comes together. So this is where we are in the guide. We've been just doing special right angles. We've been doing amplitude, midline, extrema. We've been doing period. We're basically putting all of 9-5 all through 9-7 together in order to graph these sinusoidal functions. By sinusoidal, I just mean sine and cosine. We're not really dealing with tangent. Just because it's so erratic and so weird, and a little bit easier too, truth being said. So, parent functions. So there's a sine function, there's a cosine function. Sine, where does it start on the y-axis? Does it start at 1, 0, or -1? Sine, where does it start? Sine of 0 is what?
1, 0.
It's 1 or 0. It is one of those two choices. Take a guess. Daisy guesses.
I don't know.
You have a 50-50 shot, 1 or 0.
0.
Rochelle, guess.
How about 0?
0. It is 0. And this makes sense too, right? Because on our unit circle, think back to our unit circle. On our unit circle, if I'm looking at 0 degrees, that's right there. Sine is the x or the y?
The y.
The y. What is the y coordinate of that point? 0. There it is. 0. What about cosine? Cosine of 0 is what? Is it 1? I don't know. I actually do know. I'm just lying. Cosine of 0. Well, first, it's the same point right here, right? This is cosine of 0, or this is 0. Cosine is the x or the y, Daisy? Cosine?
Yes.
The x. What is the x coordinate here on the unit circle?
1.
Therefore, it starts up here at 1. Those are the two key things that I want you to take away.
Wait.
Where?
Are you supposed to put? Cause okay, so for the for the sine,
Yeah.
you put the dot on 0, 0.
Yes.
But for cos, oh wait, I see. Never mind.
Yeah. The x coordinate is 0. The y coordinate, the output is 1. That's the output over there is 1. And then from there, sine, it goes up like this. Just know that it goes up like that, and then it eventually goes and looks like this. Brrr, brrr, brrr.
What the heck is that? That's not.
That's a sine function. Cosine function, it starts going down. It looks like this. Brrr. Oh, I got lag. Brrr, brrr, like that. Here is the important thing that I really want you to take away from these graphs. The key thing is, where does it intersect the y-axis? That was the key part. So that point is super important. 0, 0 for sine, 0, 1 for cosine. But also, did you start at the midline or did you start at a maximum or a minimum? For sine, I started at the midline. I want to label that. We started at the midline for sine. But for cosine, we started at the min, max, or midline?
Max.
We started at the max. That will be very useful for us in this lesson. Make sure we really understand that. It's annoying you. I will never do it again for the rest of the year. This was my trial day.
You know, whenever you ask questions like that, you sound like Cat in the Hat. You know the movie Cat in the Hat by Mike Myers? I guess?
With Mike Myers as an actor, yeah, it was not the best movie, yeah.
What?
I remember watching it in 5th grade.
Ah! It's the best movie.
In fact, because of that movie, the owner of all of Cat in the Hat said, I will never, ever let you make any more movies about Cat in the Hat because it was so bad.
Really?
Yeah. In fact, since we're on this tangent right now, Rotten Tomatoes, Cat in the Hat. Dr. Seuss's Cat in the Hat on Rotten Tomatoes, which is a good way of checking everything. Yeah. It is considered rotten. It is 10% by critics, 30% by audience. Even most people didn't like it. Only 30% of people liked it.
Fun.
I think it was actually a nice.
It was.
But it would have been better if, like.
You know what I realized? They put the S word into that movie. I didn't realize till like.
I didn't know that either. Anyway, that was a good tangent. Let's come back.
Wait.
Let's watch it.
We're coming back. General formula. We know this already. This is review. So help me out here, girls. A. What does A affect?
What is it called again?
No,
No.
asymptote. No, wait.
No.
It does start with an A. It does start with an A.
It's an amplitude.
Amplitude.
That's what it's called.
Acetone.
No.
Chemistry.
Acetone? No, that's
What does B affect?
Acetone.
Oh,
Period.
Period.
you're broke.
And give yourself a note for period. It's 2 pi divided by absolute value of B. Amplitude is just amplitude. H, we haven't talked about him, and we're not going to.
Why?
Fight Club. Anyway, K. No,
Okay.
we don't talk about Fight Club. In Fight Club. No, we don't talk about it because it's a horizontal shift, if you want to know, but I'm not going to be testing that in this unit. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm not going to.
It's an observatory on,
It's horizontal shift. If you want it, I'll write it up here in orange. If you want it, it's horizontal shift. And if you really want to know more about it, it's the reverse of whatever H is. So if H is 1, that means 1 to the left. If H is -1, then it's 1 to the right. But I'm not going to be worried about horizontal shift for this lesson or for this unit. So don't worry about H. You're always going to have something by itself inside the parentheses. Are we okay? I know, the 3D printer is distracting. I won't have it go anymore. And then K. What is K?
K is midline.
Midline, exactly. Label this in your notes. Write it down. This is a good review. All right. So I am going to explicitly tell you what the procedure is, although you could probably find this on your own. I just need to get through this fast because we need lots of practice of this today. Practice, practice, practice. First, you're going to graph that parent function. These are your parent functions, sine and cosine. They have an amplitude of what? What number is the amplitude for the parent functions? How high do they go? How low do they go?
Oh, wait.
Remember, amplitude is this height right here.
So it's 1.
1. The amplitude of the parent function is 1. You know that sine starts at 0, 0, cosine starts at 0, 1. You know that 1 is a midline, 1 is a max. You start with that parent function. So graph the parent function, and I'll just say as a note here, I'll do this in blue. Midline versus max. And the other thing you need to know is it 0, come on now, 0, 1 or 0, 0. Those are the things you need to be thinking about when you're graphing the parent function. Okay, next, we're going to translate the midline. I cannot spell. Midline. Again, what variable is going to affect the midline? Okay, exactly. So I'm actually going to, I can change the color. I learned how to do this recently. That's going to be the midline, which is going to be, okay. Then I want you to change the amplitude. So I'm going to do this in blue. Change the amplitude. And by the way, this is going to affect, does it affect the midline, does it affect the maximum, or does it affect the minimum? Or two of those things. What does changing the amplitude affect? Both what?
Max and min.
Max and min. Max and min. And then finally, you need to graph the period, the correct period. I should do this in orange because that would apply to my color up here. Max and min. Boom. Graph the period. And again, that's going to be 2 pi divided by absolute value of b. All right, so let's see how to do that. We have the procedure. Let's do example 1, example 2. And if we have enough time, I'd like to do a Khan Academy example to see what it actually looks like on your homework. Here we go. We're going to graph this thing. Notice that there's no H in here. There's no H in here. We don't talk about Fight Club.
So it's going to be on 0, right?
So that means you're not shifting it left or right. Exactly. It's going to be on 0. So sine, oh, are you actually doing...
I'm sorry, I wasn't really paying attention.
That's what, I appreciate your honesty. Yeah, so H, See this h right here?
Yeah.
See how there's no number where the h is?
Right.
That's because we don't talk about it.
Wait, has that ever happened? Wait.
We've never really talked about it. We're not going to.
Oh.
I just want you to know the general function. It is horizontal shift if that ever does come up. It's okay. So here I go. Step 1, graph the parent function. And I'm only going to be using an extrema point and a midline point. I'm only going to draw 2 points. And I'm going to, by dragging those 2 points, I will know exactly what happens, Rochelle.
Because there's no h, does that mean it's gonna be on 0, 0?
What's going to be on 0, 0?
Like the point.
Like the first point of the parent function? Yes. So sine goes through 0, 0. That's a key point. And then Daisy,
Yeah.
where would the point be? I don't care about where the x coordinate is yet because that'll be the period. I'm going to affect the period on step 4. That's going to be my last step. But the height of the point. How high does the point go? Does it go to -1? Does it go to 0? Does it go to 1? What's my next point of the parent function of sine?
Wait, I don't understand what you're trying to say.
So on the graph of sine, what is the amplitude? What is the height of the next point that I'm about to draw?
0.
Careful
One.
here.
2.
Just keep guessing, right?
-2.
You'll get it eventually. You said the right answer. I just didn't tell you that it was correct.
Well, I said -2 before, so.
And that's not the right answer.
Oh, then what?
It is 1. So
One.
I'm graphing this right now.
Wait, how's it 1 though?
The amplitude is 1. For the parent function, the amplitude right here is 1. All I'm doing is graphing the parent function.
They're asking to graph y equals -2.
We're going to change it in just a sec. I'm just working on graphing the parent function.
Oh. Okay.
All we're doing right now is step 1. You're already on to step 3, I think. And that's fine. You're looking ahead. And maybe you want to do it that way in the future. I'm just showing you the step-by-step process. If you want to find shortcuts, I give you the double thumbs up. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so from there, I need to go to step 2, translate the midline. Which of these points was the midline? Was it this point or that point? First point or the second point?
First one.
I don't know. What do you think, Daisy? It is the first point because we set up here, that point right there is the midline. So I'm going to change this point to go to what coordinate?
Pi over 2, 1.
Careful. So it's still going to be on this y-axis. This point right here, I'm going to translate first. I'm going to translate it using the midline number. So I'm going to translate it where? It was at 0, 0. Now it's going to be at 0, 4. That is the correct first point. I don't need to change that point. That is my permanent point of the midline. That means that this point also got translated up, right? That means that point is now right there. I just translate everything up 4. Now, after I move the midpoint, I'm going to change the amplitude. And this is what Rochelle was talking about. The amplitude is going to affect the maximum and minimum. So it's going to be affecting that point right there. That point was at 5. It was 1 amplitude above the midline of 4. But now I say -2. So now where is this point going to move? What is the height of that point after multiplying by -2? Don't just multiply 5 by -2. That's not the right answer. This had an amplitude of 1. Now it has an amplitude of, quote unquote, -2. You can't really have an amplitude of -2, but it does flip it over the midline. Want to take a guess? So first of all, if I multiplied it by 2, it would go up here. But if I multiply it by -2, it'll flip over this midline. It'll flip over that midline down to this position right here. Does that make sense? That's a bad question. Give me a fist of 5 of under.
Wait. So you're saying that if you multiply it by -2, it would be like kind of like the reciprocal type of step, or like just
A flip, yeah.
Right.
A flip around that midline. You don't just flip it around any old point. You flip it around the midline. The midline is now 4.
So your point is pi over 2 and 5, right? That's the starting, right?
Right.
And you multiply it by 2, so you get 6.
But it was a -2, exactly.
But then because it's a negative, you flip it down to a 2.
Yeah, exactly. You have it.
Oh.
So it's like a 3-step, basically.
It was a lot of steps, yeah. And you can probably take the shortcut and say, oh, well, it normally goes up to 1. Well, multiply by -2, it goes down to -2. And I know that if there are other people that are watching this video that aren't in this class, they'll probably be saying, wait, you should be doing order of operations. You should first be doing the period, then you should be doing the sign, then you should be doing the -2, then +4 at the very end. That is one way of doing it. I'm doing it this method, this order, because it is the most efficient way of graphing it for the homework set. And I already feel guilty enough about that because maybe I shouldn't be teaching to the homework set. This is the fastest way of doing it for the homework set. This is the most efficient way for the homework set. That's the reason I'm doing it. All right, so last step. Sorry, we just did step 3, so we're on the last step, graph the period. So now we have been ignoring the fact that our period has been wrong. Our period is being affected by this 1/3. So our period, we need to do 2 pi divided by b. So what is our period? How often does our graph repeat? 2 pi divided by 1/3.
2 pi divided by 1/3.
Yes.
So it'd be 6 pi.
6 pi. Daisy, do you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 pi divided by 1/3 is 6 pi. So 6 pi is the entire interval. That means if I come back up here, this entire interval between here and where it repeats is 6 pi. Half of that would be where it gets back to the midline. Half of 6 pi is
3 pi.
3 pi. That means halfway is 3 pi. But we're not graphing the other midpoint. We are graphing the extrema. So we need to take another half. Half of 3 pi is, you can leave it as a fraction,
3 pi over 2.
3 pi over 2. Half of 3 pi is 3 pi over 2. We're trying to graph that extrema. So I come back over here and I say, I'm going to move this point here to 3 pi over 2. That means my final points, I'm going to circle them in black. That point and that point are my final points. That means my sine function looks like this. If I had to do a rough sketch, it would look like this. It comes out of here, has a maximum there, comes down to the midline again at 3 pi, and then comes up to the value of 6 over here at 1, 2, 3, comes up to the value of 6 right there, and then keeps going on. I don't have to do that sketch for the homework. It will do that sketch for you as long as you know how to move the midline point and the extrema point.
Kind of reminds me of the translation, reflection, rotation.
It does, yeah. And that's exactly what you're referring back to. All of that knowledge is built into this equation. All right. That was difficult, but I think we can do another example. Are you ready? Let's go to the back. It's the same type of thing. We're using an extrema point and a midline point. Just those 2 points to graph this thing. 5 cosine 5x minus 2. You walk me through it, girls. Tell me the first point to do.
Well, we have to plug in the point on 0, 1.
0, 1. You're graphing the parent function. Good.
And
And then where's the midline?
on 1. No, wait. Yeah. No. Wouldn't it be 0?
Yeah, midline is 0. So that's what the cosine graph looks like so far.
So for the sine and cosine, the midline's always going to be 0?
Yes. It always starts at 0. All right. What's my next step?
Then you use the midline on the equation that it gives you.
Yep.
So like -2.
I'm going to change the midline, and the midline's going to be in green. And it's going to go to -2. Which point do I move? Which one is the midline? Is it the left or the right one?
The 0, 1. I mean, yeah, the 0. No, the 1, 0, sorry. That one.
1, 0. Yeah, this one. That one, this one I'm going to move down. That's my new midline. That midline is not going to change. That's going to be consistent throughout the rest of this problem. So I'm just going to go ahead here and make my midline right here. That's my midline.
And then you move the point where it's at 0, 1. Move down 2 because that's how many times you move the point.
Yep, this is going to move down as well. All right, cool. Rochelle's been doing some work. That way, that means that Daisy's going to be doing the next little bit. What should I, yep, because Rochelle just did this one. All right, right now I have a maximum, Daisy, at -1, and the graph will look like this. It'll go like this.
Wait, don't you have to multiply the -1 to 5?
Yes. So that was going to be Daisy. That was going to be Daisy's step. I just want to show you where we're currently at. That's what it's looking like. We have a maximum up here, a minimum down here at -3. How is that going to affect the graph now that I have this amplitude?
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. It's okay. You're doing correct math. I was just hoping that Daisy could help us out. And you're halfway there now, Daisy, because Rochelle helped you out.
Oh, yeah.
What is going to happen? Which of these points is going to move? Is it the midline or the maximum?
Maximum?
The maximum. So this point is going to move where then? This amplitude used to be 1 right here. Now the amplitude is...
Wait, what? Wait, so you multiply it by -5 then?
Is it 5 or -5?
Oh, it's 5, sorry.
So if the amplitude was 5, now I'm going to move it up. Or if it was 1, I'm going to move it up to 5. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Why up 5?
Because it's up 5 from the midline. So there's 1, and I'm really going to move it up 4 from the current position. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now that point is going to be moved up here. We're almost done. Almost done. Rochelle, you want to do the last step?
Sure. Alright, so you connect the dot from the one that you last moved from the up 5 to the point that we found the midline.
The midline, yep.
Yeah.
I'm going to connect that.
Oh no, we need the correct period.
Oh yeah, the correct period. So what is the period? We've been ignoring the x-coordinate right now. We just left it at 1, even though that was incorrect. Now we're going to actually shift this x-coordinate to the correct period. So find the period. What is the period of this? 2 pi divided by pi over 4 is...
It'd be pi over 2.
Wait,
Careful.
it'd be 8 pi, right? Because you
Oh, yeah.
do the reciprocal, right? So
Eight.
it's like, yeah, it's 8.
Is it 8 or 8 pi?
It's 8 pi.
It's 8. Because the pi moves down and then it crosses.
Oh yeah, crosses. Yeah, so it's 8. Yeah.
All right, the period is 8. That means what is going to be the midline? This midline, I'm going to have to switch and move that one out. Remember, I went from a maximum to a midline. That means I have gone a quarter of a period between here and here. A quarter of the period, I know that my whole period was 8. A quarter of the period, what's a quarter of 8?
Oh, it's 32.
32?
Because you multiply the reciprocal into the. No, wait.
Well, now we're going forward. That was to go backwards. Yeah, so just go forwards. Just multiply 1/4 by 8.
That'd be 2.
So I'm going to move this point right there. Now it's the correct period. Our final points, I'm going to circle them. Final point was there and there. So let's go ahead and make a rough sketch of what that graph looks like. Again, that's our maximum, so it goes maximum. Then it comes down through our minimum. And then it's going to have an amplitude, again, of 5. So I'm going to come down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, come right to. That's going to be my next point. So it's going to come up through here. That's going to be my minimum. And then it's going to go right to down to the midline. It's going to come out to the midline. And it's going to repeat, so up to that point right here to 8, 3. And then I'm going to come up here like that. So that's what my graph looks like roughly. But again, you don't have to worry about doing the sketching. All you have to do is drag that extrema and midline point correctly, and you have the answer. We get out of here at 11:56, which means we have 15 minutes left. Do you want to see a Khan Academy example to see how easy it is, or do you want to just do it and then I'll show you while you're working on the homework? Homework or example?
Both.
Both? Okay, so here I go. Let's go to Khan Academy. Rotten Tomatoes. If I come down here to graphing sinusoidal functions, if I go in student view to do an example. All right, there it is. I need to graph this equation. So I'm going to make this one a little bit faster, and we're still going to do it together. So cosine. What's the parent function of cosine look like? Cosine, does that intersect the y-axis at 0 or 1? And that's going to be at the extrema, right? So this is the extrema point. That's the midline point. So I'm going to move the extrema point to 1. I'm going to move this point right there. I don't know where it's going to belong on the x-axis. I'm just going to leave it right there for now. Maybe even there. All right. That's the extrema point. What am I going to do now? Next step.
Try to find the midline.
Midline. Midline is 3. That means I'm going to drag my midline point. This is the midline point. I'm going to drag that up to 3, right?
Yeah.
Drag it up to 3. Make sure that this point moves up as well.
But because you oh, but never mind.
Oh yeah, okay, never mind.
We're okay?
Yeah.
What do I do next?
Then you
You find that amplitude
Amplitude. Okay, what amplitude? Which number is that?
negative 4.
-4. Okay, so -4 means I'm going to change which of these 2 points? The extrema or the midline?
Extreme.
The extrema, what value should I move the extrema to? It was at 4. It should move down or up to where?
Up 4 or down 4.
Down 4? 1, 2, 3, 4, like that?
Yeah.
Be careful. What's the amplitude now? Amplitude is this distance. The amplitude is now 3.
So you move the midline as well.
Nope, midline can't move. Midline's done. We can't move the midline anymore. I'm going to move this one down more. That way the amplitude is correct. The amplitude is now 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh.
Yeah.
oh
So amplitude, this distance between the midline, the height difference between the midline and the extrema, the minimum, is now 4. Okay, and then finally, what am I going to do?
You find the period,
Period. Period is 2 pi divided by the number in front of x,
which is 1.
which is 1. So the period is
2 pi.
2 pi. Then I need to divide that by 4 every single time. Divide by 4. 2 pi divided by 4, Daisy.
2 wait what?
2 pi divided by 4.
2 pi divided by 4 is 4. Right? Wait.
Reduce the fraction 2 pi over 4.
Wait, I can't do this right now.
Do it on your whiteboard.
It's 2 pi.
2 pi divided by 4 on your whiteboard.
Is it pi over 2?
It is pi over 2. Where should I drag this green point to go to pi over 2? Where is pi over 2?
Oh, it's right there.
Oh, it's right. Yeah, we already have it. It's right in between 0 and pi. There it is. That's our example. All right, go ahead and do your summaries.